the art of making people follow you blindly, Machiavellian tricks. What if I told you that getting people to follow you doesn't depend on being good, honest, or even right? What if the real key to influence lies not in virtue, but in perception, manipulation, and the careful orchestration of fear and admiration? That's not just a provocative theory, it's a truth Niccolo Machiavelli saw with terrifying clarity. And in this video, we're going to go deep. Not just into his ideas, but into how they can be used ethically or unethically to make people follow you without question. If that sounds dark, it should. But this isn't about becoming a villain. It's about understanding the rules of power that most people pretend don't exist. Because whether you're leading a team, building a brand, or trying to change the world, people don't simply follow logic. They follow presence. They follow strength. They follow belief. And Machiavelli understood that human nature, at its core, is predictable if you're willing to look past the illusions. Let's start by asking a brutal question. Why do people follow anyone? Is it because they truly believe in the leader's vision? Sometimes. But more often, they follow because they see something in that person that solves a problem for them. That might be protection. It might be direction. It might be the illusion of certainty in a chaotic world. The first Machiavellian insight is this: people crave order, not truth. They will align with whoever gives them a sense of stability, even if that stability is constructed from illusion. So, if you want people to follow you blindly, the first move isn't to convince them with facts. It's to create an emotional environment where they need you. That's uncomfortable to hear, but it's true. Machiavelli wrote, "It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both." That doesn't mean cruelty. It means presence. It means showing that you are capable of decisive action, that you are not to be taken lightly, and that your leadership is not optional, it's essential.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more topics you love.
But here's where it gets more nuanced. Fear alone doesn't create blind loyalty. It creates compliance. And compliance can crack the moment a stronger force appears. But what creates devotion is the fusion of fear and admiration. People follow blindly when they both respect and depend on you. So how do you build that? You create myth. You control narrative. You let them see what you want them to see, and you hide what makes you vulnerable. You become, in a sense, a crafted character shaped not by lies, but by selective truth. Think about the most powerful figures in history, not just political leaders, but cultural icons, CEOs, even influencers. What do they all share? A carefully managed image. They know how to present strength, even when they're uncertain. They know how to speak to people's desires, not just their intellects. And most importantly, they understand timing, when to appear, when to withdraw, when to act with shocking decisiveness. That's not luck, that's strategy, and it's pure Machiavelli. But let's pause here, because I want to ask you something deeper. Are you willing to be misunderstood in order to be influential? That might be the real price of power. Machiavelli makes it clear, if you want to be universally liked, you will never lead. The desire to be loved by everyone makes you weak, predictable, and easily controlled. But if you're willing to carry tension, if you're willing to be seen as harsh or cold, or even manipulative, you gain something far more valuable: freedom. Now, there's an ethical edge to all this, and we need to address it. Because the same Machiavellian principles that can be used to build a movement can also be used to build a cult. The same strategies that inspire loyalty can create dependency. So the question becomes, what kind of leader are you trying to be? Are you using your influence to empower others or to keep them beneath you? Are you building something real, or are you just feeding your ego with blind followers? Machiavelli wouldn't care, but we should. Because the art of making people follow you blindly isn't just about them, it's about you, who you become through the process. And whether the power you gain is worth the part of your soul you might lose. The illusion of morality. Why good intentions don't matter in power games. If you've ever believed that having good intentions is enough to lead, influence, or change the world, then prepare to be disillusioned. Because in the world Machiavelli saw, and in the one we still live in, morality is not the currency of power. Deception is. Results are. Control is. And good intentions, no matter how noble, are often irrelevant. Not because ethics are meaningless, but because people judge leaders not by their hearts, but by their outcomes. They don't follow your conscience. They follow your competence and the way you make them feel. Machiavelli's genius wasn't in inventing cruelty or manipulation. It was in exposing what most were too afraid to admit, that the world is not fair, and that those who cling blindly to moral purity often fall to those who are willing to be strategic. He wasn't anti-morality, he was anti-naivety. He saw that many leaders fail not because they are unkind, but because they are unprepared for the ruthlessness of reality. And in that sense, morality becomes a kind of armor that doesn't protect you, it exposes you. Now, let's be precise. This doesn't mean you should become a tyrant. It means you must understand the battlefield you're on. When you play the game of influence, of leadership, of commanding loyalty, you are not dealing with logic. You are dealing with emotion, instinct, and survival. People want to believe in something that gives them hope, but they also want to follow someone who can protect them from chaos. If your morality makes you hesitant, indecisive, or weak in the face of pressure, you lose their trust. And once trust is gone, leadership dies. This raises a painful question. Is it better to do wrong for the right reason, or to do what is right and lose everything? Machiavelli would say, the right action is the one that preserves your power, because without it, your values mean nothing. If you want to change the world, you have to survive long enough to do it. And surviving often means compromising in ways that the purely moral mind cannot tolerate. But here's where things get even more interesting. While the masses are drawn to morality in language, they are drawn to strength in action. You can speak of virtue all you want, but if you falter when it's time to act, you will be replaced by someone who doesn't. That's why Machiavelli urged rulers to appear virtuous, even if they weren't. Not to deceive maliciously, but to maintain the image people needed while doing what reality required. The split between appearance and truth is not hypocrisy. It's strategy. Think about modern leadership, political, social, or even digital. How many leaders have we seen fall because they believed their personal goodness would shield them from attack? How many idealists have been crushed because they underestimated the brutality of those who opposed them? The lesson is clear: power doesn't reward innocence, it rewards awareness. And to lead effectively, you must understand that morality is a tool, not a guarantee. So what does this mean for you? It means you must choose, not between good and evil, but between comfort and clarity, between the illusion that being right is enough, and the reality that influence requires more than virtue, it requires vision, command, and often sacrifice. If you want people to follow you blindly, you must first convince them that you are capable of making the hard decisions they don't want to face, and that you can carry the weight they can't, and that you see the world as it is, not as they wish it would be, and that you still know how to win. But here's the twist. Once you understand this, once you see that morality is often a mask people wear to protect their self-image, you gain immense power. Not to manipulate, but to choose. You can choose when to be soft and when to be sharp, when to show mercy and when to draw a line. You're no longer bound by surface ideals. You're guided by deeper purpose. That is the power Machiavelli understood, not the domination of others, but the mastery of self in a world that constantly tempts you to lie, to please, to retreat. Ask yourself this: are you willing to be unpopular in order to be effective? Are you willing to be called ruthless if it means protecting what truly matters? Because if the answer is no, you may need to reconsider your desire for leadership. But if the answer is yes, if you're ready to wear the mask when needed, to bend without breaking, but to act not just from feeling but from foresight, then you are already walking the Machiavellian path. And that's not evil. That's clarity. That's responsibility. That's the art of leadership in a world that doesn't play fair. Fear, love, and control. Building a cult of devotion without saying a word. Power, real power, doesn't scream. It doesn't beg to be noticed. It doesn't constantly explain itself. The most magnetic leaders, the ones people follow blindly, understand that influence is not about volume, but about presence. It's about how people feel in your orbit, even when you're silent. You don't need to command attention when your very existence radiates self-assurance, decisiveness, and quiet dominance. People don't just listen to you, they watch you. They study your reactions. They mirror your energy. And when you've mastered yourself, you've already begun mastering them. At the center of this mastery is the delicate balance between fear and love. Machiavelli asked one of the most dangerous and enduring questions in political philosophy: is it better to be loved or feared? His answer was not simplistic. He didn't say fear is always better, but that if you must choose, choose fear. Love is fickle. It depends on mood, on circumstance, on the sweetness of your gestures. Fear, when earned through consistent strength and discipline, is reliable. It stays even when love fades. But the real leaders, the ones who build cult-like devotion, understand something subtler. They cultivate both. They engineer an aura of admiration and consequence. People not only want to please them, they fear disappointing them. This is how control is built without force. When people are emotionally attached to your approval and psychologically unsettled by your withdrawal, you no longer need to manipulate. Their loyalty becomes self-regulated. They anticipate your desires. They defend your name. They create narratives around you that you never asked for, and that's the deepest level of influence. Not when you control people's actions, but when you control their stories. When they explain their choices in reference to you. This is what he would do. She wouldn't accept anything less. You don't lead by micromanaging. You lead by becoming a symbol. But becoming a symbol requires precision. You must be deliberate in how you show emotion, when you offer approval, and where you place distance. You must learn to be unpredictable in timing, but consistent in principle. People should never quite know when you'll show up, but they should always know who you'll be when you do. That tension between certainty and mystery creates gravity. It keeps people orbiting around your presence, not because they're forced to, but because they can't look away. Now reflect on this. How do people feel when they're around you? Not what do they think, but what do they feel? Are they at ease? Are they alert? Do they feel inspired? Afraid? Safe? Unsettled? Whatever that answer is, that's the foundation of your influence. And if you want people to follow you blindly, you must learn to evoke the right emotional signature. Not artificial, but intentional. You don't pretend to be strong. You become strong. You don't act confident. You build confidence through discipline, clarity, and self-respect. The more you embody what others crave, the less you need to ask for loyalty. It comes to you. But here's the warning: if you base your power only on fear, you will eventually be overthrown. Not always externally, but internally. People will obey, but they will not trust. And when the first sign of weakness appears, they will turn on you. That's why love matters, not the romantic kind, but the deep, emotional resonance that makes people believe you care about something greater than yourself. When people believe you are for them, not just above them, their loyalty becomes personal. But that's when you go from being a leader to being a legend in their minds. So the art is in the duality. You must be both admired and slightly feared, approachable but untouchable, present but elusive. And above all, you must never seem desperate for loyalty. Because the moment you chase it, you lose it. Influence, like respect, is earned in silence and tested in absence. When people follow you without knowing why, when they defend you without being asked, when they fear disappointing you more than they fear punishment, you've built something that cannot be measured in followers or votes. You've built a psychological throne. The final move: how to disappear at the peak and become immortal. There is one final move that separates those who are merely influential from those who become immortal in the minds of others. It's not more attention. It's not greater dominance. It's absence. The most powerful leaders, thinkers, and legends across history understood something most people never even consider. If you stay too long, you become ordinary. If you speak too much, you become predictable. And if you are always available, your presence loses weight. The final Machiavellian trick is not in how you lead, but in when you leave and how you leave behind something that continues to lead without you. To disappear at your peak is not an act of retreat. It is an act of supreme control. It's the moment when you've built enough of a myth, enough of a psychological imprint, that your physical presence becomes irrelevant. People still hear your voice in their heads, still follow your principles, still ask, "What would you do?" Even when you're not there. This is the ultimate form of control, not by force, but by legacy. You've implanted yourself into the structure of their thoughts. You've become a symbol, and symbols don't die. But let's be clear, to reach this level, you must have built something more than a crowd. You must have built belief. People must not only know your name, they must feel it. You must have shown strength without cruelty, clarity without rigidity, compassion without weakness. And then, just when they think they need you most, you vanish, not in failure, but in mystery. You don't explain your exit. You don't beg for remembrance. You don't collapse under the weight of your own creation. You walk away and let the legend do the work. This disappearance can take many forms. Sometimes it's literal stepping back from a position of influence, refusing the spotlight, letting others speak your words. Sometimes it's internal, choosing not to respond, not to defend, not to clarify. Let others project. Let others wonder. The less you say after your rise, the more they remember what you already said. The silence amplifies your voice. The absence deepens your presence. And here's the paradox. By letting go, you hold more. By disappearing, you become everywhere. Machiavelli never said this directly, but it's embedded in all his thinking. The prince who knows when to step away becomes a myth. The one who clings too long becomes a cautionary tale. Power, like beauty or fame, decays when overexposed. So the master move is restraint. Leave not when you are forgotten, but when you are unforgettable. Ask yourself, are you building something that can outlive your presence? Are you crafting a message, a method, a myth that can guide others without you needing to explain it every time? If not, you're still playing a small game. You're still chasing attention, not shaping perception. And the real Machiavellian player isn't content with the stage. They want to become the architecture of belief itself. This is the final art, not to be followed forever, but to design a system of thought, a feeling, a force that continues to lead without your voice. That is the difference between power and immortality. Power fades. Immortality is when your absence becomes more powerful than your presence. So, if you want people to follow you blindly, don't just lead with charisma. Don't just rule with strategy. Lead with such force of clarity and presence that when you're gone, they still feel you guiding them. And when they wonder where you've gone, they realize the answer is simple. You're already inside them. That is how you disappear. That is how you win the game forever.